What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. Continuing week 3, we are moving to the Friday games. We have a trio coming up for you. Before we get started, if you like this content, please consider subscribing, leaving a like. Those things help the channel way more than you can possibly imagine from the back end, especially a small channel like this. So if you have done that, thank you. If you have a request for a future video, a game you want to see, please let me know in the comments. We're taking requests for the G5 episode. We call it the greasy episode. We get to mostly the games we missed on the first show, which is all the marquee games. Last thing, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. We talk sides, we talk totals as we go through all the matchups. But let's dive in. 3 games starting in the Big 12. Colorado takes on Houston. Weird game. Spread is 5 points in favor of Houston, the home team. 44.5 is the total. So Colorado, I'm not sure what to say. As far as the resume goes, they lose to Georgia Tech in a game that was probably closer than it should have been, considering they had a 2% post-game winning expectancy. They scored 7 points off 3 Georgia Tech turnovers, so this could have gotten even worse. Yards per play was not all that close. The story of the game was them getting annihilated by Haynes King on the ground. And even with all that said, they had an opportunity to win the game. Deion Sanders, their head coach, messed up the clock and erased that chance. So that's a couple of things to mention. The game probably should have been wider in terms of margin of defeat. And then your head coach does not understand key game situations. The second game they played last week against Delaware, they win 31-7. They lost yards per play, 6.0 to 5.7. Delaware outgained them per play. This is another game where they generated 3 turnovers. Their turnover margin right now is insane. And Delaware also had 5 drives into Colorado territory, 2 of those into the red zone that they scored 0 points on. 0 points. They also had a punt blocked. I mean, Delaware looked pretty decent in this game. On the other side, there's not really much to be gained from Houston's 2 contests. They beat Stephen F. Austin. They did beat Rice, which is kind of important to me. Rice is a upstart team. To get into them a little bit, they're running like an option style attack. So defeating a team that is playing you in a weird way is important to me. They dominated them in yards per play. So it was a good showing for Houston. They've done exactly what we've needed them to this point. We have to start with Colorado. Okay, Ryan Staub is, I guess, going to start this game. Deion wouldn't name him the starter outright, but he did reveal that he is getting most of the first-team reps. So if you're not going to start him, why would you give him first-team reps? I just don't get it, man. You have a highly recruited 4-star in Juju Lewis. You have a proven all-conference, at least at the G5 level, quarterback in Caden Salter. Ryan Staub actually, when he got named the starter, the line moved Houston's direction, which should tell you all you need to know. He's a low-level recruit who hasn't played a lot to this point in his career, and it's hard to evaluate him because all we've seen him really do is beat up on Delaware playing their first year in the FBS. I mean, I just don't get it. Truly don't. The skill position players have not lived up to expectation, and this is a mess too. They have 3 4-star freshmen receivers that have accounted for 49 combined snaps. Now, Omarion Miller did get hurt. That hasn't helped. But the players we projected to start for this team, Omarion Miller, hurt. Draylon Miller, 39 yards. Joseph Williams, 65 yards. He's the premier Tulsa transfer. Who's been playing? Sincere Brown from Campbell, he caught a bomb against Delaware, so his yards go up to 120. But their second leading receiver is DeKalen Taylor, an FCS transfer at running back. I'm not going to lie. My projections on this team in the beginning of the season were pretty good because they're so talented. The problem is they're not playing the talent. So what are we getting out of this team? Micah Welch has been okay at running back. It's better at running back, but it still might not even be average. The offensive line, I'm not sure what they're doing here either. They're starting 4 transfers. Xavier Hill from Memphis, Zarian McGill from Louisiana Tech, Zion Chrysler, a cast-off from Illinois, and Larry Johnson, a cast-off from Tennessee. The only other player starting is their former 5-star Jordan Seaton. But, I mean, Phillip Houston's still here. He was a pretty good starter last year. Why is he on the bench? I'm just not really confident in this offensive line either. The entire offensive infrastructure is full of questions right now. I'm just not sure they're putting their best players on the field. And I'm no coach. What I can say about that is, generally speaking, when your higher recruited players, your players that allow you to achieve a ceiling, don't make it on the field, that generally means they underachieved. It's not that your walk-ons, your low-level recruits burst onto the scene, found some talent that generally was unexpected. It goes the other way more often than not. So Colorado's offense, big concern for me, not even looking at some of the problems they've had, getting like 7 points off 3 turnovers against Georgia Tech, whatever it is. It's been a problem. Houston's defense much improved from last year, second year under Willie Fritz. Their efficiency metrics look fantastic because of the level of competition. But this is kind of what we expected for this team. They brought in a fair amount of transfers at this point. On the defensive line, Eddie Walls from FIU, Khalil Laufau from Washington State. They're solid. Sion Fotu has been good in the linebacker room from Utah. Solid transfers in the secondary. Jordan Allen from LSU, Rook Brown from Wyoming, Will James from Southern Miss. Not all of those players are from a high level of competition, but they are upgrades in what they had last year. They're helping out the returning starters like Kentrell Webb, Latrell McCutcheon had been able to be a little bit better. I don't think the defense is good. I don't think they're anywhere close to the top 10 as the early numbers indicate. Again, that's just the competition they've faced. But I do think this defense is improved and probably will cause Colorado some problems. They have some old Tulane transfers, especially at linebacker, that are sort of getting their feet wet. We haven't even seen the talent they've brought in, at least all of it. So I am interested in Houston overall on defense. Just want to see what this looks like against a better offense in Colorado. Unfortunately, Colorado's QB decision might hinder that a little bit. On the Houston side on offense, Connor Wegman comes in, been up and down through his career. He's the Texas A&M transfer, elite recruit, but we haven't always seen it. And honestly, even so far, 7.7 yards per attempt, 64.5% completion. He has 2 turnover-worthy plays. He's taken 4 sacks already, too. The offensive line has been a problem. A 41% pressure rate is definitely not good. So it's not like he's taken these 4 sacks a lot on his own doing it. I mean, the offensive line has hung him out to dry at times, too. The run game has been poor for this team. That's kind of just what you get. Dean Connors has actually been okay, 6.5 yards per carry. We know he's a good pass catcher. But your receivers, your tight ends, you're kind of relying on Tanner Koziol from Ball State as one of your premier players. That's a concern for me. Amari Thomas from UAB, Stephen Johnson, who's an incumbent. They've been decent. I'm not sure the offense is dynamic either. Again, it's better than last year, though. And then the O-line. This is my biggest concern. It's a weird imbalanced unit. So we have the blended efficiency metrics here. They're 129th in pass blocking, 11th in run blocking. So it's extremely imbalanced. They have 1 returning starter in Demetrius Hunter. He's solid. And then 4 transfers who come mostly from good competition. Alvin Ebiseli from Baylor, Matthew Wyckoff from Cal, Dalton Merriman from Texas Tech. And then the final starter is Mackenzie Agnello from New Mexico. I think this is a decent offensive line. I'm not sure it's fantastic. Maybe 70th is an expectation for this team, and that might be their ceiling. Basically, the story with Houston is they're improved almost everywhere, but this team was not great last year. So improvement, are we talking going from like 80th to 20th? Probably not. It's more probably like 80th to 65th. On Colorado's defense, their efficiency metrics are horrible, and I'm not sure what to say. They allowed 8.7 yards per attempt to Delaware. They allowed 6.8 yards per carry to Georgia Tech. Literally the only difference maker on this defense has been DJ McKinley. I mean, in the secondary, like Carter Stoutmire wasn't bad last year. He's not been as good this year, and maybe that's removing some defensive backs like Travis Hunter. Preston Hodge has been a mess. You're starting younger defensive backs. Your linebackers are both G5 transfers, and outside of like turnovers and recovering random fumbles, Martavius French from UTSA and Reginald Hughes from Jacksonville State have been a disaster. The D-line should be better than it is. I don't understand what's happening. Players like Jaheim Otis, highly recruited players, solid contributors at Alabama. He played in a rotation, so it's not like he was the guy on that defensive line, but he still played at Alabama, contributed, good efficiency metrics. He's been a disaster here. What happened? So I don't know. This Colorado team gives me the bad vibes across the board. Just not sure what's going on. The play we made in the game is over 43 for a couple of reasons. One, pacing should be pretty good in this contest. You look at Colorado, they're currently 65th in pace. We know they play fast. Houston is 55th, which is a little faster than expected. But still, Pace is above average, at least according to projections. So that's the first part that gets you there. And to be clear, we bet over 43 early in the week. We do make this at 49. So still showing some value. No issues with the 44.5. But from there, Houston, we expect them to move the ball against Colorado's defense. Just mentioned what Colorado's defense is doing or not doing is the better way to say it. The real gamble right now is, what do you think of Ryan Staub? If you think he can move the ball against Houston's defense, which again, I think is around average, you take the over here. We took this when we thought it was going to be Salter or Lewis, but I have to say, I'm not a coach. I'm going to assume rational coaching here. If Ryan Staub truly gives you the best chance to win, we should still be looking at over, which is where we will sit. That's a big assumption. I'm making it. If you don't feel comfortable with that assumption, I completely get it. That is where we land. Kansas State, Arizona, second Big 12 clash. 1.5 point spread in favor of Kansas State. The total in the game is 54.5. Very tough sledding for Kansas State right now. They have a post-game win expectancy. These are what you get. Okay. They lose to Iowa State by 3, post-game win expectancy of 79%. Beat North Dakota in a wild shootout, post-game win expectancy 89%. Lose to Army last week by 3 points, 70% post-game win expectancy. So what's happened? I mean, against Iowa State, on top of that win expectancy, they outgained Iowa State 6.7 to 4.2. Real problems were in an extremely sloppy game. Kansas State's were more costly. They muffed the punt, gave Iowa State easy points there. That happened a couple times. Against Army, 1 yards per play, 5.7 to 4.1. In position to win the game, Army had to get an onside kick to go down the field and win. So the tough sledding for Kansas State. And fortunately for them, they're not dead in this conference, which might surprise you. They just need to win the Big 12. And according to their post-game win expectancy, this team is not as bad as people think. If you end up in the Big 12 championship, which is unlikely but possible, you can still make the playoff. These non-con losses are not a hindrance to you because this team basically plays in a conference that's a 1 or 2 bid league anyway, where you need to win to get in. Anyway, Arizona beat Hawaii, where Hawaii's quarterback got hurt. It is what it is. Beat Weber State is what it is. Not much to be gained from either of those teams. I will say coming into the season, this might be a little more informative for you. So we have the preseason lines that we set to for home field advantage. We had Arizona favored in the preseason lines. So I want to just start with, I don't think I'm really overreacting by siding with Arizona at this point, but here's why. Let's begin with Kansas State. Avery Johnson has been okay. With the good comes the bad. The bad, 7 turnover-worthy plays that have resulted in only 1 interception. Some fumbles, but the sacks, he's only taken 1. That's been good. The problems with the offense stem from him with the turnovers first and foremost. And then his pass catchers have not played well. They have an 11% drop rate. That's 11% of his passes. It's a problem. It's going to be volatile with Avery Johnson until he starts cleaning up the turnover-worthy plays. The good, it looks great. The bad, it costs them games. But the skill position players, losing Dylan Edwards definitely didn't help them. He's their star running back, at least on paper. Apparently, he could be back in this game off the ankle sprain. He injured it on that opening punt. He muffed. Haven't seen him since. Joe Jackson's been awful in his stead, 4.5 yards per carry. The receiving game, we mentioned the drops. They just lost Jaron Bradley, one of their top 3 receivers, which now puts extra emphasis on Jace Brown and Jerron Tibbs, the Purdue transfer. Both of them have been pretty good. It's kind of volume driven more than efficiency. And they've used some 12 personnel. I think they're probably going to embrace that a little more now that we lost Jaron Bradley for multiple weeks. It's Garrett Oakley, Will Swanson, and Braden Lofton. Haven't seen their 4-star Lincoln Cure, one of the highest recruits in program history. Hopefully he gets involved at some point. But even this has been a little lackluster for Kansas State, which is a little surprising to me. The offensive line is a group I do like. Outside of Poitier at guard, it's been a pretty good unit, and that's seen in the pressure rate. It's only 22% for Avery Johnson. It's quite good. And, I mean, they've had a few moving parts. So, we talked about Poitier. He's not great. Terrence Enos got hurt for this team. J.B. Nelson didn't play in their last game. So they're sort of shifting one of the other positions too. But with that, they got redshirt freshman 4-star Gus Hawkins on the field. I don't think that's a bad thing long term. To break it down, you have 4 positions that are pretty settled. maybe 3 if you don't like Poitier. The final position, you could be moving to a more talented player over time, just getting reps. I think the O-line is still good, and they've been a top 50 unit clearly so far this year. Arizona's defense, a couple of injuries to mention. Trey Smith, one of their edge rushers, has been hurt. That is impactful. Otherwise, the defense has done exactly what we thought they would. I think they're around average. So 23rd is a bit of probably closer to their ceiling, especially if Trey Smith is hurt. Would they need him on the edge? Since then, they've turned to Malachi Bailey from Alcorn State and an incumbent Dominic Lolosio. They're a decent pairing, but Trey Smith would definitely help there. Inside, they've been pretty good. Tyaloa from Texas, Tyaloa Save. Hope I'm saying that right. It's a tough name. He's been good, and you get a Texas transfer. That's what you expect. Otherwise, linebackers pretty solid with Tay Brown. Max Harris transferred in from Texas State to help him. Secondary has been pretty good. Their returning starters were solid with Genesis Smith and Dalton Johnson. They bring in Aiden Garnes and Michael Dansby from West Virginia and San Jose. They brought in a lot of secondary transfers, so I'm happy those guys were able to win the job. The only issue is Trayden Stukes has been hurt. Getting him back would help. There are questions. It's not the highest level of transfers across the board. Some are lower, some are higher. So there are holes you could potentially poke in this defense, even with the hot start. 23rd, probably their ceiling. I think the unit probably finishes in the 50s, maybe 60 overall when it's all said and done. So Kansas State can probably move the ball as long as they don't fall into the turnover trap that has been the problem with them so far this season. On the Arizona side, I'm not a big Noah Fafita guy. He had the awesome season with Ted McMillan, with Jacob Cowing, regresses severely last year with just Ted McMillan. Teams could take him away. We even saw FCS teams like Northern Arizona bracketed him, and it was a disaster. He's a shorter QB, so he always runs into some limitations because of that. So far, it's been pretty good, 65% completion, no turnover-worthy plays. He has taken 4 sacks on a 40% pressure rate. That's my biggest concern. This offensive line has been an issue against low-level competition. What does it look like against this level of competition? Kansas State. Receivers have also dropped 12% of his passes. I will say they have held players out, though. So I don't know if you've seen Arizona play to their max output. We have the starters returning in this game. More on that as they come up. Skill position players, they held out Kedrick Reese-Connell last game. We got to see Quincy Craig play a little more. The Portland State transfer looked great. Ismail Mahdi's played. It's a decent backfield. Reese-Connell is a former 4-star if they get him back. They've also severely limited their receivers. Chris Hudson has barely played, the Washington State transfer. Chris Hunter's barely played. Luke Weissong's barely played. So your leading receiver is Javin Watley from Chattanooga, and he's looked good. But I think the receiving game's probably going to shift at some point this season, probably this game. 2 more talented players, more talented transfers that have been banged up in camp that they've limited through their easy opponents weeks 1 and 2. So I'm not sure we've seen the ceiling for the skill players. The offensive line, it's been pretty bad so far this year. It's imbalanced. 114th in pass blocking, 12th in run blocking. We mentioned the 40% pressure rate. That needs to be better. I think some of the players are interesting. The transfers that are starting are Tristan Bounds from Michigan, Kaina DeCambre from Hawaii, and Ty Buchanan from Texas Tech. 2 decent transfers. The holdovers are Alexander Deuce and Michael Wooten. They're okay. I think the unit is probably around average. Not anything that we're really going to rely on. But can they beat Kansas State's defense? The answer is probably yes. This has been a shootout team. The defensive line is a complete mess. They're not generating any pressure outside of Toby Osunsami. The interior is a little better with Damian Ialo and Uso Suomalo, but that's basically just run defense. There's not been a pass rush to speak of. They're 83rd so far this year. The linebackers are the strength of their team, Austin Romaine and Desmond Purnell, but that only goes so far. Not one of the defensive backs grades out significantly above average, and their crown jewel transfer, Gunnar Maldonado from Arizona, has been benched. They're starting a West Georgia transfer and Quay Moss over him right now. And Maldonado came off a severe injury last year. Maybe that's still bothering him. I don't know. But this defense has been a disaster, and it's not like they're playing competent teams. You have an FCS team. You have Army, who runs the option. Iowa State's offense is even limited as good as Rocco Becht is. They have no receivers, and they're forced to play 12 personnel every single play, and they can't run the ball. It's been a mess. So I think Arizona probably does move the ball. I took Arizona at a bad number to pick them, and I don't feel good about that. I don't even feel good about them plus 1.5. I don't know why I was so eager to take that number. We show value on the Arizona side mathematically. We showed value on it coming into the season, which is why I'm not buying out of it or anything like that. But if you're only taking 1 or 2 games or something like that, you just want one play on the weekend, this is not the one. I'm going to ride out the plus 1.5, or excuse me, the pick 'em I have. But if you're looking to bet multiple games, I think the plus 1.5 does show some value. I'm just a little queasy, not being a Fafita guy. I think Kansas State's better than what they've shown. I don't know. It's a weird game. As is the final game, New Mexico, UCLA, 15.5 point spread in favor of the home team, UCLA. Total in the game is 53. Brand new coaching staff from New Mexico. It's an FCS level coaching staff and an FCS level roster for the most part. UCLA, we've seen what they've done. It's been a disaster. They lose to Utah, blown out, not close at all. They had 1 turnover on down at the Utah 40. That's about as close as they got. Complete mess. They just lose to UNLV by 7. Post-game win expectancy, they were at 10%, so it wasn't particularly close. They lost yards per play, 6.9 to 6.0. I guess the issues, maybe if they were going to win the game, they had a fumble and an interception. So both of them cost some points. I mean, it still wasn't particularly close. For New Mexico, they played Michigan to a game a little closer than some might have expected, 34-17. That margin of victory should have been wider for Michigan. And then they beat Idaho State 32-22, which looks kind of bad, but they had an 81% post-game win expectancy. This Idaho State team might not be bad either. They gave UNLV a game. So as far as FCS teams go, I think you can write this off a little more than others. It's still not good. So injuries in the game, Neville Brown and the offensive line missed the first 2 games for New Mexico. UCLA has been very banged up. A couple offensive linemen have been out. Nico DeVilliers on the edge. The receiving room has been a disaster. Rico Flores and Carter Shaw are out. So getting to the stylistics, New Mexico is starting an FCS transfer, Jack Lane at QB. I don't really know what to say. 66% completion percentage, 5.4 yards per attempt. He does have 4 big-time throws and 0 turnover-worthy plays. However, he has 3 interceptions somehow. This is the worst rate in the country. Receivers are responsible for these interceptions. It's been a mess. He's not mobile, which is a problem. His receivers have an 8.3% drop rate. His pressure rate's up at 30%, 31%. The infrastructure is just kind of bad for Lane, and this is what you get when you have low-level Mountain West teams undergoing coaching changes and going to the FCS. So you look at the skill players, running back, Scott Trey Humphrey, FCS. He is averaging 6.2 yards per carry, but it's not been the most efficient. It's hard to evaluate the opponents. You're on both sides of the spectrum. Michigan, way better than their conference. FCS team, generally way worse, albeit Idaho State, a decent team. Their leading receivers are tight end Dorian Thomas and running back Damon Bankston. They have nothing out of their receivers so far. They have 1 decent transfer in Keegan Johnson from Kansas State, but the pass game is not one we're expecting to be good. The run game has been decent at best. This offensive line projects to be one of the worst in the entire country. And so far, they're 121st in pass blocking, 128th in run blocking. They had 1 starter back. Their other players that they're starting, they have 2 inexperienced youthful players in Tevin Shaw and Malika Lane. Their transfers are Caden Robnett from Idaho and Israel Mukwiza from Mercer. It's just a bad unit. UCLA's defense is not good. They're better than this. They lost their top 10 players. I mean, this edge group could finally see some openings. Gary Smith and Keanu Williams have not been the worst defenders on the team inside. They benched Jacob Busick last week. Thank goodness. Played their 4-star Keyshawn Bennett, the Michigan transfer. That should have happened in week 1. It just didn't. So finally, they figured that out. The secondary is a complete mess. They're starting 5 transfers at all times. It's rotated a little bit. To be honest with you, I don't really have a good reason for why they're so bad. You look at the players they have. Cole Martin's from Arizona State. Key Lawrence is from Ole Miss. Roderick Pleasant from Oregon. And those are just examples. They have 10 transfers back here. Most of them pretty good caliber of recruiting, pretty good programs they're from. Just hasn't come together. And maybe it's partially they're starting 5 transfers. That could be an issue too. I think this defense is just too talented to let New Mexico like run up and down the field on them. This FCS roster against mainly four stars on the defense. Nico Iamaleava, he's gotten a ton of criticism. The criticism he deserves. You just shouldn't have left Tennessee, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You left a good situation with more money to go to a worse situation in UCLA for less money. So, yeah, his stats don't look good. 62.5% completion, 6.1 yards per attempt, 1 turnover-worthy play has led into 2 interceptions. He's been let down. This skill group he's playing with is atrocious. The offensive line is atrocious. Receivers are dropping passes. He has a 40.5% sack rate. And in week 1, that was at 60%. So you go from Utah to UNLV and it drops a little bit. They play better, but it's still a concern. They're getting manhandled by the best competition. And somehow his pressure to sack ratio is only 19%. For a guy who's been under pressure this much, it's honestly shocking that it's been this good. He is maybe not maximized, but overachieved in this situation, which I don't think a lot of people would give him credit for. The bottom line is the situation is just a disaster, and I'm not sure there's a quarterback in the country that could succeed here the way it's built right now. The skill position players are average at best and probably below average. The run game's been a mess. Javian Thomas from Cal is the second leading rusher on the team. Their run rate's been low because of game script, but I mean, this is a mess. The receiving game, Quasi Gilmer is leading the team with 118 yards. Their second leading receiver is Anthony Woods, who's actually a running back. Mikey Matthews has done nothing for the 3rd consecutive year. He's just not lived up to his 4-star billing. It's a mess. The offensive line is a mess. They had 2 starters back. They're outside the top 100 right now in pass blocking. Run blocking is only a little better. Garrett DeGorgio probably should have transferred. He was the only guy who was decent coming back. Sam Yoon, they're still starting him at center. I can't believe they went into the season after seeing last year just standing pat on this. Like, Sam Yoon was horrible. He's been horrible so far this year. He's getting Iamaleava killed as he got Garbers killed last year. They just benched Cortland Ford. They put in Ruben Unige, the Houston transfer formerly. He's been there for a while now. That only helped a little bit. It's a disaster. But does it matter against New Mexico? You're playing a really low-level team here. The answer to me is probably not. They got demolished by Michigan. They allowed 6.8 yards per attempt to Idaho State. They only returned 3 starters. That's what happens when you change coaching staffs. Demetri Johnson's the only above-average one, and he's now coming off the bench. So I'm not really sure what to say. Almost everyone's a transfer. They're all low-level transfers. Keyshawn James Newby from Idaho is the only one who's played above average. So I'm not going to get into every single player here. This is a defense that's probably going to be in the bottom 10 of the country. So that leads us to the spread, 15.5. The opponent is basically how you get there with how bad UCLA has been. The problem is we actually make this minus 15.8 mathematically. I can't play New Mexico on the road with this new coaching staff and FCS roster. So it's them or pass. And for those of you that are curious what the numbers were ahead of the season before we incorporated what we've seen so far, we had 19.3. So I think it's UCLA or pass. I think you could play an over or pass. UCLA's offense should have a lot more success, and they're 43rd in pace. New Mexico, I can't guarantee the success, but they are 39th in pace. Pace lines up in your favor for an over at 53. Yeah. I think I would rather take UCLA, especially with the optics they put on the field so far. I'm not a narrative guy, but you could see how they would want to run up the score in this game after how bad they've been through their first 2. But that is where we will leave it. Thank you guys for watching. If you have a request, please leave it in the comments below for the Greasy games. The G5 games should be coming up Thursday or Friday. Until then, thank you for watching. Good luck.